It's time to get your checking account to zero with free checking from PenFed. That's zero ATM fees, zero balance requirements, and zero time spent waiting for your paycheck to direct deposit because you can receive it up to 2 days early. Open your account with just $25 and see how big zero can be. Apply online today at penfed.org/free checking. Early direct deposit eligibility may vary between pay periods and timing of payer's funding. To receive any advertised product, you must become a member of PenFed, insured by NCUA.
PenFed's got great rates for everyone.
Welcome back to the podcast. Guest today is Ian Hudson. How's it going, man?
Not too bad. How you doing?
Doing well. So last weekend, I got to give some sort of frame of reference here. Last weekend was what weekend was that? The 15th, 16th. You and I were talking on like Thursday, and we kind of convinced each other to go out. Did you have any luck last weekend? What happened when you went out for deer?
No luck. Only saw one deer. It was weirdly quiet in the woods that day, for sure.
Is it a little bit early for what you usually do, or does it really matter? I tend to hit October just pretty hard just because I'm so excited, but some people talk about early October being like a dead period where everything is just kind of getting up its strength, but then you always see pictures of people who have called in really big bucks on the 12th or 8th or something like that. So it makes you think, man, what should I just be out there and just putting hours on it? Or what's your normal routine when it comes to hunting non-alpine blacktail?
Typically, I try to get out as many weekends as possible just to kind of get away from the normal weekday work routine. But for me, my success usually comes in the later part of the month and into early to mid-November, I'd say.
Yeah. Halloween is kind of the day that I circle. It seems like that's just when things have happened. I don't know if I hunt harder because I'm excited for that day or what happens, but yeah, I think later, the last weekend of October and then first couple weeks of November definitely are the times I like to get out there.
Yeah, most of my extended trips where I take a few days off work and really hit it hard for a few days in a row are in the later parts of October, either the weekend of Halloween or into the first week of November for sure.
Yeah. Do you have like the same program that you run, or do you live down in Metlakatla, and so like one of the main things that we do in this area is just, looking, going to different islands or heading across to, small bodies of water, bigger bodies of water to get to these spots. Do you have like a spot that you have carved out, or is it just whatever you can do based on the weather?
A lot of it's weather-based. For kind of the more local trips and the weekends, I try to get off the island as much as possible. I know a guy here, a friend that's hunted pretty much every day since alpine season. He's been up 16 mountains on that island and hasn't seen a single buck yet. So,
geez.
Yeah, getting off the island and getting over into some of the other local areas is kind of for me, what I try to get after, and it just depends on how pressured an area is and what kind of tactic I take from there.
Yeah, you kind of have to have a little bit of a short-term memory, because that if it's like a Sunday, that someone was probably in that spot Saturday, and it's so disheartening to see other footprints, but you think, all right, I got to put that out of my mind, otherwise I'm going to be discouraged. So I'm pretend that no one was there, hunt it like there's a deer here, and hunt it like a person hasn't been here. But that can be tough because there's so many people going out. So every little cove that you think is going to be good, someone else probably has thought it was good and may have even been there.
Yeah. And sometimes when you visit the same spot in multiple weekends in a row, you don't know if those are your footprints that you're seeing or someone else's. So sometimes it's a little bit challenging, and the mental side of things can work against you a lot of the time.
Yeah. Do you go back to the same spot like week in and week out? Like if sometimes you go out there and you see some rubs and see some sign, you think, man, there's got to be something here. Or do you, I didn't see it, I got to go somewhere else, somewhere fresh?
I guess it just kind of depends on how much I see, like you said, the previous weekend. If I have a couple encounters, call in several does, and see promising sign, I might head back to that same spot. But like last weekend, I maybe saw 10 piles of fresh scat over the course of 5 miles hiked. And so to me, it wasn't an area that I'd probably go back to if the weather was permitting this weekend. But yeah, it just kind of depends on what you see out there.
Yeah. That's the I don't know if it's a problem or it's some sort of dynamic. If you know that the spot is supposed to have deer and it had deer the year before and you're not seeing a lot of sign, it's either having faith in the spot that stuff's going to move more as you get closer to the rut, but at the same time, it could be stupid to go back, because why would you go back if you didn't see the stuff? But at the same time, you're trusting the reputation of the spot, and it can really kind of get in your head, especially that whole week that you have to think about it. Like, okay, next Friday I'm going to go out. I hope no one else is there, and I didn't see much there, but I'm going to, the last couple of years I have seen stuff there, and it's kind of messes with your head.
Yeah, and also with the storms that we've had stacked up on each other this year, if you just have a small window, I mean, going back to a spot that you're not as confident in is better than not getting out there at all.
Yeah.
So at least you have somewhat of a chance.
Yeah. Figuring out some of those spots is so huge too. Like, you just knowing the terrain, knowing where, as you approach this muskeg, you know exactly what it looks like rather than what you think it looks like based on what Google says or on X. And you kind of get access points, and rather than do this, kind of loop around to this way, and here's where I found some rubs. So having that confidence can really play big. I was talking to some guys that moose hunt, and they're up north, and they have their moose camp, and they've had it there for a long time, and they say it's not a real area of dense population, but they know the area so well that they're able to kind of figure out the moose that are in the area. So rather than needing a whole bunch of moose, it's, hey, we know the area really well, and so even though the population isn't dense, we're gonna probably make it happen with one and hopefully two per year, that's got to be definitely the luxury of being able to go to the same spot and not have a lot of other people in the area.
Yeah, and some of these areas that are closer to us, Metlakatla guys get out there, catch can guys get out there a lot, and so your technique, you kind of figure that all the deer kind of call shy. Every time they hear deer call, someone's waiting for them on the other end of it. And so lately in those spots, I've just been trying to find high traffic areas. I might sit and wait for 45 minutes and see if anything happens. I might, toot the call once and see if anything's nearby that hears me after I've been quiet for a long period of time. But yeah, man, this weekend I only had one doe come up to me. She was a big one, but it's amazing the difference in color right now than the August alpine deer. You go from a really bright orange to this one was super dark gray, hard to see. It took like a tail flip for me to even recognize that she was there. So yeah, it definitely gets more challenging, but it also gets easier because they're more responsive to noises.
I saw two this last weekend, and it was the same sort of thing. I kind of saw some movement, but it was just the white from the underside of the tail that I saw. Then I noticed everything else was moving, and so as I moved up its back, I got to where the head should have been, and it was just a little bit too thick, and I couldn't tell if it was a buck. There were two of them, so I mean, it could have been a buck and a doe. It could also have been two yearlings, or sometimes you see a doe with a yearling. So I don't know what it was, but yeah, it's so hard. They just blend in, and it's not that uniform color. You can have a dark gray, you can have a really, really dark gray, and then some are a little bit lighter. But man, it's tough to see in those coats.
After years of fine print contracts and getting ripped off by big wireless providers, if we've learned anything, it's that there's always a catch. So when I first heard that Mint Mobile offers premium wireless starting at just $15 a month, I thought, what's the catch? But after talking to them and using their service, it all made sense. There isn't one. Mint Mobile's secret sauce is that they're the first company to sell wireless service online only. They cut out the cost of retail stores and pass those sweet savings directly to you. For anyone who hates their phone bill, Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for just $15 a month. I was hesitant about having to get a new phone and a new phone number, but with Mint, you can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and keep your same phone and your same phone number along with all of your existing contacts. Mint Mobile gives you the best rate whether you're buying for one or for a family, and at Mint, families start at 2 lines. All plans come with unlimited talk and text plus high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Switch to Mint Mobile and get premium wireless service starting at just $15 a month. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and to get the plans shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/waypoint. That is mintmobile.com/waypoint. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/waypoint.
Yeah, sometimes when I'm sitting there in an open area, I kind of try to picture myself as I'm looking on the other side of a hill and looking back at myself and seeing if I could, pick myself out of the surroundings. And deer have a natural camouflage to their environment, and so unless they're moving around, it does make it pretty easy, hard to see.
Yeah. It's kind of like when you're looking down into the water to look for fish, how you have to look through the water and try to find the bottom, and then everything on top of that will stand out a little bit more. You'll see kind of a design of the spots that are on the tail or on the back, and then you can see the shape of the thing by looking through it, and the same sort of thing. If you look through, sometimes you can see that, oh, there's 2 eyes right there, or a lot of times you pick up the antlers first because that reddish or that brown doesn't look like something else in that area, but then sometimes the antler looks exactly the same color brown as the trees and brush, and it can be tough to pick them out and know for sure before it's too late.
Yeah, I thought for sure I had found a buck last weekend, and I was sitting there looking at it through my scopes. I forgot my binoculars, and it had the orange kind of glow of a buck, but it turned out to just be one of those nice tree bucks.
Yeah, I had one a couple of years ago where I was we kind of skirted this muskeg, and I didn't want to go through it because it was really easy to approach it from the other side and just walk through it. So I figured that's what people are going to do. So I'm going to do something maybe a little bit different, and nothing was happening. So I just kind of went around this big cedar tree to take a dump, to be crass or whatever. And I'm squatting there, and I look and I think, oh man, look at those. That's a great pair of antlers right there. And I kind of laugh to myself because it's totally branches. But then it moves, and I think, oh my gosh, it actually is a buck. I had seen so many of those branch bucks, and then when it started moving, oh my gosh, it's here. And so I pulled up, went around, got my rifle, and was able to kind of sneak up and make a frontal shot from like 20 yards. But those things just happen so fast. That's what's so exciting about it. It's not kind of the down south program when people talk about glassing until dark, and right before dark something is going to emerge from the trees. Up here it's something can emerge from anywhere at any point, and then all of a sudden it's on, and it can get western really quick.
Yeah. And after we got back to the boat this last weekend, we each just saw one doe, and we were just talking about the feeling that you experience when you think, or when you see an animal, when you're expecting it or not quite expecting it. You get that, the heart flutters, and all of a sudden things get hot and heavy really quick. It's just for hunting, that's like one of my favorite parts of the experience, is getting all those emotions going all at once.
Yeah. You do much archery?
I do not. During COVID, I bought a recurve bow that I've practiced with some, but for me, rifle hunting for them is challenging enough that I haven't gotten the courage to just take out a recurve.
Yeah. It adds a whole different thing. When you react with a rifle, it's a matter of like lifting, pointing, shooting, and it's all just a matter of seconds. But with With the bow, it's okay, gosh, I see it. It might see me. I got to range it first, then I got to draw back, then I got to settle the pin, and then I got to touch the trigger and hope everything goes right. So it's a whole different thing. But yeah, I mean, there are times where I think about, am I really good enough at hunting to make things more difficult on myself? Like, am I really skilled enough at calling in, and if calling in is not the right thing, then I should do a grunt. If those two, like, which one should I use? Or I'm going to rattle here because of this. I'm just saying, I don't know, I'll maybe call a little bit, but I know what you mean about the call shy in some areas, and I feel that like a soft call is almost too much.
Yeah.
Or maybe not call at all and just do a rattle or just do a grunt. Like, what do you do as far as those three?
I've tried the rattle a little bit. I've also tried one of those like Primos grunt calls, and I've actually had a little bit of luck with the grunt calls. I haven't used the rattle enough to experience really any reaction to it. Maybe it's just because I'm impatient, but I know a few guys that swear by just the rattle. So, I stick mostly just to the try and chew fawn bleat, but maybe it's time to switch some things up.
Yeah. Have you heard many deer grunt?
Last year I had 2 different encounters where I heard a grunt and I couldn't see what was making the sound, but it seemed like it was a buck. It was just behind some brush. But on another occasion, I had a doe and a fawn basically responding to my call, with a call that sounded just like a deer call. And I could clearly see them opening their mouth and making the sound, and that was a first for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard the grunts when you go online and like listen to, there's a lot of, it's very actually limited when it comes to blacktails, but like down south with whitetails and things like that, they have those grunts, and it's more of an elongated sound, whereas the grunts that I've heard are just, it sounds like a frog, and it's pretty short. It's not drawn out with multiple tones. It's just kind of like a frog making a sound or something burping. It's I've heard a doe do the doe grunt a little bit, so it's kind of interesting, but it's a lot more subtle, and I think I might try that a little bit more. And then rattling, same thing, but I don't know. I've heard, and this kind of put me off on rattling a little bit, is that if you have, I got a nice pair of, it was a wolf kill over on Prince of Wales, and I picked the antlers, and it's a nice 3x, but then someone said, "Oh, you rattling with those?" And I said, "Oh yeah." He said, "Well, what if it's a forky?" I was like, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, if you have a nice set of antlers and it's a nice 3x3, the sound that you're going to make is going to make it sound like something pretty big is over there. And so if you have like a nice forky or something like that hears a really big fight from bigger deer, then it might get out of town with that." And that's a really good point. And so if you want something dominant to come in, like, do you want to challenge with something that makes a lot of noise, like it's 2 big deer going, and then risk scaring off something smaller? Or do you want to go maybe a little bit smaller, a little less aggressive, and then maybe bring something in that thinks that it can take over, is curious? So I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've actually never thought of that either. Adam tied me together some antlers a couple of years ago with some paracord, and it's actually like a smaller forky. So maybe that is the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you what, these are some pretty looking antlers to be rattling with. They're beautiful, tied up and just awesome and rich. You probably think, why are they not on the wall? Well, it was a wolf kill, so just remove that. It's pretty stinky, but yeah. What about your call? Is it just kind of a low and soft? Are you kind of aggressive? I've heard both in the woods, people soft calling and people going crazy like they're trying to call in a wolf.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it kind of depends on what the weather's doing. This last weekend, it was almost like weirdly quiet, and so I stayed super soft on it. But if it's raining and windy, I feel like the sound projects better when you get more into it. And, I've talked to some people that kill a lot of deer that say just wail on that thing. So I don't know. I mean, the idea that a deer is going to come marching through the muskeg right to your call, I've only had that happen on a handful of occasions. And so a lot of the times it's me kind of getting lucky when I'm in the timber. Maybe they're coming in from me calling, 20 minutes prior, and I'm quiet enough to where they didn't hear me or something. But yeah, for me, it's like the weather. If it's quiet, I blow softer. If it's really nasty out, I get on a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, you can find anything you're really looking for. I know some people who are in areas that aren't very crowded, they just have deer running at them, which is crazy. And sometimes in the crowded areas, the highly pressured area, you have deer doing the same, but there are people who say wail on it. Some people say real soft and low, and rather than try to call something in from 2 muskegs over, it's when you approach this muskeg, you're calling for this muskeg and kind of this smaller approach of something in this vicinity. Assume that there is a buck in this muskeg, and you're just trying to call him out or call him across. And then if nothing happens, then slowly move to the other one and then call him that individual muskeg. And that seems like a really meticulous, well thought out plan. But it works for people, and I don't know. I'm kind of in your boat where things have worked, and I haven't had so much success with one that one is clearly my favorite because everything's been kind of different. Sometimes with the call, things have been good. I've seen them rake on stuff, and I think, okay, I just got to do that back. But yeah, figuring it out is pretty fun.
Yeah, it definitely is fun. It keeps it where it's not an expected program every time you go out. For me, every trip ends a little bit differently if I have some success. So it's hard to me to pinpoint one thing that I do that's successful because it seems to change so often.
Yeah. What about afterwards? What's one of your favorite ways to prepare deer? I mean, obviously there's the back strap, there's the tenderloin. Those are kind of they're really good things. Do you have a summer sausage or any recipes with sausage or pepperoni sticks or anything like that, or is it just kind of ground and steak?
I've done pepperoni sticks over the years, and it's not like I have a secret concoction. I usually order one of those pre-made kits where you kind of mix the meat together and then tube it up and cut it up and smoke it. But those turn out really well. I've done breakfast sausage that is super killer, but those are all just kind of kit based. I don't have enough access to the supplies of spices that you need to really kind of hone down your own recipe here.
Yeah. Yeah, some of the stuff you have to buy in such bulk and you would never use it for anything else that it's just so much nicer to buy the kit. And some of the kits are super, super tasty, and they're not super terrible for you. Some of them are just kind of a wasteland of bad ingredients, but you can get some really good tasting ones without necessarily, I don't want to sound like some sort of anti-MSG, anti-nitrate type thing, but sometimes you can notice a difference if it's just tastes a little bit healthier, even though it is a kit. But yeah, I got some chorizo waiting for me. I got some pepperoni stick mix waiting for me. So I just need to seal the deal on a deer here and make it happen.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of chorizo. It's pretty good in most things.
Yeah. Can't go wrong with that. So another thing I wanted to talk to you about was not hunting, but hunting Bigfoot, but Bigfoot himself, itself. You sent me a picture of something standing on a rock, and you said Bigfoot, and I kind of laughed. And it just got me thinking, I'm surprised I haven't really talked about it on the podcast after all these episodes, but, Southeast Alaska is definitely one of those areas where people tend to be a little bit more on the side of maybe believing it. People talk about it in Washington and Oregon. It's well, those places are so populated, there's no chance. But Southeast Alaska, if there was a place, it'd be here.
Yeah, that picture that's funny because I forgot I had sent that to you, but my wife and I were out cruising a couple weeks ago, and took a stroll on the beach, and I look out, and it just looks like a big old human figure out on a point. And, it almost looked like it was digging around for something, but I went back to the truck, grabbed binoculars, and it seemed to be just a rock. It was a ways away, so I couldn't tell for sure. But in those instances, it doesn't seem like as real as when you're by yourself in the woods and you almost hear stuff that is something that you've never heard before. I don't know if you have any experiences like that or not, but the last time I went to the spot that I hunted last weekend, I had something almost unexplainable start responding to my deer call. And at first it sounded like it was almost like a small, soft elk bugle. And then I started thinking to myself, well, this island isn't known for having elk. Am I allowed to shoot it if it comes out? And then it started making these like almost ape sounding noises, and it was always responding to my call. And so after my neck hair stood up and I kind of got weirded out, I boogied out of there because I didn't really want any part of what was on that end of that call.
Yeah. It's kind of funny that I kind of prefaced this by talking about Bigfoot, and then that's the lens through which you see, or I don't know how you can see a story, but it definitely sounds like some sort of encounter, but there's a lot of weird stuff that happens in the woods. And I've heard things, growing up on Prince of Wales Island. It's another case of, people tell stories, and my native art teacher, grew up and he'd be telling these stories, and like, gosh, he could totally be lying, but it's convincing. And he's a man of reputable reputation. And you start thinking, oh my gosh, it's so crazy. And you can convince yourself when you're out there that anything could be it. But, squirrels make weird noises. Deer make really weird noises. But sometimes things are a little bit different.
Yeah. And, the last time I'd been to the spot was that time I'd heard the noises. And so this weekend when I was there, I didn't hear anything unusual, but I just had this feeling like something was constantly monitoring where I was. And, it's easy for the mind to kind of trick you into thinking things that aren't happening. But I don't get that feeling very often. And I kept running into these weird things in the woods that, I couldn't really explain. I kept seeing these, it almost looked like tripwires, where it was like if a spider web had, collected some moisture and was visible. And then I went up to it and I was looking at it, and it's, from the movies, you pull the wire and that big net comes up and pulls you up into the tree. So I looked around, I was like, well, that can't possibly happen here. And so I tugged on it, and it was like a very fibrous, thin, but super strong string. And I encountered it 2 more times when I was in the woods, and I just had this bizarre feeling. And so, my mind talked myself into getting out of the timber and hunting the muskegs for the rest of the day.
Yeah, after you told me that, I was like, oh, it's probably just a student, and it made us both laugh. But so are you like a Bigfoot agnostic? Or where are you at on believing Bigfoot?
Like you, when I was in school in 8th grade, I had a science teacher that, he wrote a book about Bigfoot. He had a monstrous piece of scat, which he was convinced was a Bigfoot turd, and he had it encased in glass, and it was, kind of a iconic item in his room. But, I really like the idea of it being out there. It's hard for me to pinpoint what I believe it actually is. Is it some sort of like multi-realm traveling being, or is it something that's so rare that no one ever sees it? I mean, people always compare it to like, well, you never see bear bones in the woods, so why would you ever see Bigfoot? I mean, I haven't seen a bear skeleton in the woods, but I also don't hunt in areas that have giant populations of them, so
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, my wife and I this summer, we camped a few nights in North Cascades National Park in Washington, which, it's a national park, but it's nothing like Yellowstone or any of those super populated ones. I think it's like top or bottom 5 in visitors per year. And so it's remote. And the feeling I had last weekend was pretty much the same that we both had when we were in that park hiking around. It just felt like there was something mysterious going on. And I don't know what that feeling is when I get it, but it's something different.
Yeah. I don't believe in Bigfoot,
No.
but I like the idea of this, and so if someone tells me a good story, I'm like, oh, this is nonsense. Like, oh, it's because it's kind of cool to get caught up with that. But the same token, I would not be 100% surprised. It's like that 98%. So overwhelmingly convinced that there's no Bigfoot, but the door is not closed. It's darn close, or like it's closed but not locked. I don't know. I think there's so much out there to have any sort of absolute. Abby just got home from a walk and she's looking at me like, Bigfoot, really? You talking about Bigfoot?
I'm there too. I'm pretty high on it. We would have discovered it by now if it was there.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, when you look at like all these cultures from around the world, they all have some sort of being like that. Prior to globalization, they never communicated with one another.
Mm-hmm.
So you have like the Yeti in the Himalayas and Sasquatch in Canada, Bigfoot in the United States. There's all these references to it, which makes it, I don't know, you can get really caught into conspiracy theories, and if you're not thinking clearly, you can easily buy into them. So
yeah.
I would like there to be a chance of there one being one, but yeah, I'm kind of in the same position as you. It wouldn't shock me, but at the same time, it's not likely.
Yeah. Growing up in Southeast, there's such an expanse of empty wilderness. I mean, it's overwhelmingly dense how wild it is. It's not a matter of, if there was a Bigfoot, it would probably, long before, once the highways came in, then this and that. But things here they're pretty stinking wild. And just to figure out what is absolutely and what is not absolutely is, I don't know. Those sort of absolutes make me a little bit uncomfortable just because there's just so much that I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to get a true, accurate number of how many wolves are in the forest in a certain area because they're so hard to find and observe. So, it's like the classic Dumb and Dumber quote, you're saying there's a chance.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you gone down? I know, I think it was Meat Eater or something that did a podcast or did an episode about, whether or not you'd kill Bigfoot. And I'm like, I don't know. That seems like kind of a lower 48 sort of, if it existed, would you kill it or not? Like there's just a lot more before you get to the point of killing it.
It is for sure. And I think on one, I don't know if it was that episode or a different one, but some lady came on and she did like a mini series podcast about Bigfoots. And I had listened to that one just because I was curious about it. And there's some crazy stories out there, and to me, they're super entertaining to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, I think that again, I don't believe in Bigfoot, but if the likeliest encounter would be something if they've been able to not be seen by human beings for this long, it's not going to be a matter of if you get the drop on it. It's going to be if it allows itself to be seen and communicated with. Mm-hmm. And so in that, it would be more of a, not would you kill it? It would be, would you tell anybody? Like, would it be in an area where it attempts to communicate or you're kind of hanging out with it? You're not going to be able to get the drop on it because it's survived for so long. And would you tell people that, hey, I talked with it. We hung out. We discussed whatever we discussed. But whether or not you'd share that because people are going to think you're absolutely crazy.
Yeah. And if you did get one, would Boone and Crockett add that as a species to the list.
Would you get a little pin? I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Cannot imagine. I mean, you get destroyed for any. Like, it's bad enough for people just hunting, you know, and it's murder to kill animals and this and that. So if you killed Sasquatch, it'd be over.
Oh yeah.
Like yeah, just terrible. But
Well, there's plenty of people to claim to have seen it. It's just the documentation of it is lacking.
yeah,
And nowadays, with so much Photoshop and video editing equipment, it's hard to see through the baloney if things are actually real or not.
yeah, I think it's getting increasingly would be difficult to trust stuff just because the technology is so advanced, right? You know, and we're I don't know, but would you want to have an encounter? Like encounter as far as like something that is legitimate enough, like you see it, you communicate with it, you hang out, it talks to you, or something that's like a real bona fide thing, but you don't have evidence. You can't get a picture or anything like that. You don't get a recording on your phone. Would you want that, knowing that no one would believe you?
I think if I was with another person, I would welcome that experience, but by myself, it might be a little terrifying, and then you're totally full of crap, whoever you tell about it.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think it'd be a cool experience to have with one other human being with you.
Yeah, who'd you choose?
That's a hard question to answer. I have no idea.
Yeah, that would be an interesting one. Yeah,
Maybe
I don't
my
know.
dad.
What's that?
Maybe my dad.
That'd be cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have no idea. No idea. But yeah. So what else you got? We can get off Bigfoots here. What else you got for the winter after rut? What's kind of the entertainment thing down in Met? Is it just kind of a hunker down, wait for spring bear, steelhead, stuff like that? What do you got for the winter?
Oh, let me see. Yeah, it's a bit of the hunker down stuff. My wife's got a family in Oregon, so we get excited for our trip down there for Christmas break. And then, some inside hobbies. Last year we messed around a little bit with making some soap and tying some flies and
Nice.
just stuff to keep you busy when seems like it's always dark when you're not at work.
Yeah. You went on a heck of a road trip this summer, and I know it kind of got the wheels turning. Like even when I was down there in Wyoming hunting with Abby for mule deer and elk, it gets the wheels turning about, man, this would be sweet to be able to do this every year. But that's just for however long the season is, and you have 11 more months down south. So, do you ever get the wheels, or did you have to combat the feeling of it'd be nice to not live in Alaska anymore?
After being on a big long road trip, it really is a sense of freedom to be able to just hop in the truck and go, and there's no limits on really where you can drive, and that aspect I really miss about being down there. But at the same time, my wife and I pass this question along all the time, and parts of it are great and other parts are not as great. And so it's really something tough to juggle. I think that the freedom to explore places that have very little amounts of people is something that's valuable, and not a lot of places have that anymore. And so that's what is kind of keeping us here, I think, for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I think every winter, as things settle down and the excitement of the fishing bonanza and then the hunting bonanza, and you kind of settle into that dark and in Southeast Alaska wet, you start to think, oh man, would it be better somewhere else? But it's so easy to regurgitate the brochure of some other places and think, oh, it'd be so nice to have an in and out. And, oh man, if you could just do this and you could get on the roads. But that's the best part of it. What's the rest of it? And then is it worth it to endure this stuff? And just keep coming back to the fact that it's really nice to live in a community that has one high school, that has that level of support, And, like rural Alaska is a little bit different. Ketchikan's kind of the big city in southeast other than Juneau. So, even Ketchikan at 12,000 people, it seems like a regional hub or something like that. But, it is pretty nice. And then also having the airport here in Ketchikan, like you can be down to Seattle in no time. Just catch that plane and you're down there. A little bit longer, Abby and I are going to head down San Diego for Christmas and then go over and see my mom in Tucson. And it's going to be easy to get over there. It's not a big deal. If you're some places down south, if you want to go somewhere, you got to drive 3 to 4 hours into the big city, get on the plane, and then go from there. So, you start a little bit more objective look at things, and it might suck weather-wise, but it's nowhere is perfect, and it's pretty darn good here.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that we are kind of looking at too. Is Ketchikan is a place that's small, and the access is so great. I mean, for us, there's no ferry to Ketchikan on Tuesdays or Wednesdays, so all your travel has to be on the other 5 days of the week. It's a 45-minute ferry ride over there. I mean, that's only twice a day. And so for me to get to Seattle is like a half a day to an overnight deal. And that's hard to do for for you can pop down to Seattle for Thanksgiving, no problem, and be back.
Yeah.
For me, that would mean leaving work a day early and then getting back a day early in order to catch the ferry back over here. So definitely feel more trapped over here.
Yeah. I was thinking about, Prince of Wales, such a great place to hunt and fish and beautiful. But, my mom being in Klawock, it was, you got to drive hour to get on the ferry in the morning to come over to Ketchikan and then maybe hit the flight. Or if you had the Island Air early morning flights, you're spending $200 some to fly over to catch the south flight. So, and that's the way it is for so much of Alaska. Even if you're in like Wasilla Palmer, like you're on the road system, but you're driving whatever it takes to get to Anchorage to then fly out. So it's the travel piece is just, it's pretty crazy here. And it's that little sweet spot is good. But I don't know.
Yeah. Prince of Wales definitely has it harder than I do.
Yeah.
But they have a lot of stuff better. So it's everything's a happy medium.
Yeah. I don't know if there's a happy medium when it comes to some of those areas that have the last barge that comes up the river in August or September, and like your heating fuel for the year comes up, and then that's it. That's all you get until breakup. Man, I can't imagine what it's like to live in some of those areas. Taking snow machines for the basketball games and everything. That's just, I guess if you have no comparison, then it just is the way it is, and you kind of get used to that sort of lifestyle. And it is rugged, and I'm sure a lot of people really like it. But man, that'd be rough.
Yep, it's a different lifestyle for sure. I mean, we've got kids here that Ketchikan's the only other place that they've been in their entire life, which is wild to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Same thing with Klawock. Like going down south meant going to Seattle. And being, that we would go down to Colorado to visit grandparents every summer. I thought, well, down south is like Colorado. Down south is, going to Tucson for spring training or something like that. But, I was fortunate enough to have a family that we could travel and had places to go. And, some people are just perfectly content. It's like, like Prince of Wales is great. Why would I leave? Like, that's a good point. Save the money and, buy a nice four-wheeler or something like that to get around. So.
Yeah, for sure.
To each his or her own. So, well, it's almost about dinner time here. So, what do you got for as far as a closer or anything?
Well, I'm just super excited for this year's rut. I'd really like the Mother Nature to give us a small break between these storms so we could have an enjoyable weekend. I think it's supposed to be mid 40 mile-an-hour winds this weekend, which is rough, but. Yeah, I wish everyone a good luck out there in the deer grounds, and hopefully everyone gets some meat for the freezer for the winter.
Nice. What do you guys got for as far as Tongass Talk goes?
For that, Adam's been super busy. I think he's only spent 6 nights in his bed in the last month and a half, which for him, I don't think he's complaining about much, but It's been hard to get anything together since summertime, so
Yeah.
hopefully when hunting season ends, we can start getting back on a roll.
Yeah. Well, he's been guiding elk down in Colorado, right?
Yeah, I think New Mexico,
New Mexico.
and Colorado maybe. He's working for some outfit, but it sounds like he's been having some success, which is exciting.
That's cool. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for being on, man. Take care. Good luck, and then we'll be in touch.
Sounds good, man. Good luck.
All right. Take care.
Bye.